It is now my great pleasure to introduce this year's senior class commencement speaker, John Howley. It seems fitting that John should end his Loomis Chaffee career as a student on a stage in front of an eager audience. Whether playing a murderous Scottish king or a height-challenged lord, a feisty grandmother, or free-spirited spelling bee contestant, John's talent and dedication to each role enabled him to convincingly embody a diverse range of characters and to keep us entertained from curtain up to curtain call. A talented singer, John also was a member of the concert choir, chamber singers, and a capellicans. For his contributions to the performing arts at Loomis, John received the Junior Theatre and Dance Award, the Morris H. Brown Senior Dance and Theatre Arts Prize, and the Aaron P. Pratt Junior Senior Music Prize. John is quick to credit much of his success to his teachers and peers, once sharing, "I'm constantly challenged by the people around me to meet their level, and that just keeps me thriving." When not on stage, John was a member of the Schultz Fellowship, a section editor for The Log, an environmental proctor, and an admissions tour guide. John excelled in the classroom, earning a Junior English Award and departmental honors in English, Science, and Language, and was recognized for both his scholarship and his citizenship with a Founders Prize. It is my very great pleasure to invite to the podium your class speaker, John Howley.
I'd like to start by expressing my sincere gratitude for such a wonderful in-person graduation. Of course, commencement is a little different this year. Instead of an entourage of family and friends, we each had to pick 4 people to accompany us today, undoubtedly resulting in some hurt feelings within the family. I'm sorry, Grandma, you didn't make the cut. But even though things may not look like they once did, we are still so fortunate to find ourselves here, in front of founders, surrounded by family, faculty, and friends, preparing to receive our coveted diploma and along with it, some semblance of adulthood. And as we prepare to leave the island once and for all, I find myself reflecting on my firsts at Loomis. The first time I auditioned for a play in the Neo Theater. The first time I had to write an interpretive sentence. And of course, my very first memory at Loomis. In fact, after much psychological digging, I think I've actually identified our class's collective first Loomis memory. A memory that we as a student body have buried deep within our consciousness. A memory that many of us have repressed so far in our psyches that we completely forget it happened at all. That's right, I'm talking about the ropes course. You see, when the Loomis administration was coming up with how best to welcome new Pelicans to the island during orientation, they wanted to do more than give us a map of campus and exchange icebreakers. They thought that the best way to make scared, nervous, insecure freshmen feel at home in their new surroundings was to take them into the woods and make them dangle from a zip line. Now, some people may have enjoyed trying to figure out how to fit 18 kids on a 4-foot-long rectangle. But if you're anything like me, you found it somewhat difficult to make friends while trying to balance yourself on a wooden plank. All I remember is leaving the ropes course with the clothes I had chosen for my first day of school, drenched in muddy water after Dean Donegan sprayed me for not being able to name all the underclassmen dorms. And as I stood there, cold, wet, and still without friends, I couldn't help but wonder, what was I supposed to learn from this? I mean, I came to Loomis to learn what a semicolon was, how math works, and whether or not Zoe 101 was an accurate portrayal of boarding school. Not to subject myself to a makeshift obstacle course that looked like something from the Blair Witch Project. But after 4 years of life at Loomis, I'm finally starting to see some of the value in those hours spent at the ropes course. Firstly, the value of balance. Although I've never had to walk a tightrope since that day, I have found balance to be essential to surviving life as a pelican. After all, there is a lot to balance as a Loomis student. Where did the teacher post the asynchronous work? Was it in the calendar or resources section? Do I have a tag meeting today? Did I fail my COVID test with enough saliva? Or do I just have, as Dean Matskin once put it during a class meeting, really bubbly spit? Of course, with so much to juggle in our day-to-day lives, we were bound to slip up a few times. But what makes Loomis unique is that whenever I found myself struggling to manage, I knew that I could look to others for help. Like when Miss Trenchard spent nearly every community time giving me extra help while I was trying to keep up in freshman math. Or when my college counselor, Mr. Stewart, let me advice on my supplemental essays that would give me a momentary panic attack, but turn out to be incredibly insightful. There were also times when I literally lost my balance, and the Loomis community was still prepared to assist me. Like when I fell off my bike during my brief stint on the Loomis cycling team, and Miss Sapula wrapped my arm in a bandage and calmly suggested that I needed to go to the hospital immediately. But regardless of who helped you or how you managed high school, I think we can all agree that Loomis has been, in many ways, like a tightrope, a balancing act that, with the help of others, brought us to where we are today. And that brings me to the second value that I learned at the ropes course, teamwork. Just as the ropes course necessitated working together in order to accomplish goals, being a Loomis student undoubtedly requires support from others. And throughout 4 years, this support came in many different forms. Whether it was getting coffee with your advisor, a shoulder to cry on from your best friend, or a Google Doc littered with comments from an overly aggressive peer editor, we have all, to some extent, relied on others to get us to where we are today. I mean, look around. Surrounding us are the very teachers, parents, and peers who put in an extraordinary amount of effort to bring our education to fruition. And sure, sometimes we may get frustrated when our parents call us 4 times in a row to ask us why we're failing chemistry, when our teachers don't update Veracross until the last day of the term, or when our friends don't Venmo us for that Dunkin' Donuts we got them 3 weeks ago. But when I remember Loomis, I know I will remember the people, the teachers, staff, and students who inspired me here on the island and will continue to inspire me as I move to college and beyond. And the last value that has played an instrumental role during our Loomis tenure has been perseverance. Between a pandemic, a tumultuous election, and asynchronous classes, our grade has had to persevere through incredibly difficult circumstances. It started our freshman year when we were greeted by a massive pit where Scanlon now stands. Many will remember meals spent in Erickson Gym and violent games of ping pong in the knee room. It was also during this time that I was in my first fall play at Loomis. The show we were performing was called Pericles, and it was written by the man who has forced many a Loomis student to visit the writing studio, Mr. William Shakespeare himself. It was opening night, and eagerly, the cast and I were backstage, preparing to perform our show in the quaint barn house. I was appearing in my debut Shakespeare performance as an incestual and tyrannical king, so as you can imagine, I was already a little out of my comfort zone. And then, with 30 minutes to curtain call, the lights went out. We received a text explaining that there had been a school-wide blackout, and that physical plant was unaware when the power would resume. Now, at this point, most students would send out some hastily written email rescheduling the show. But instead of letting circumstance derail our plans, we quickly got to work, decorating the front of the small stage with battery-powered candles and preparing to let the show go on despite the outage. And even though the lights came back on 10 minutes before the show was set to start, what mattered was that we were ready to perform in the dark. And as a class, we have repeatedly been forced to and prepared to perform in the dark. And I know that at this point, talking about the pandemic has become incredibly redundant. For over a year now, we have been constantly reminded of the abnormality of our high school experience and the significance of graduating during a pandemic. But we should not think of our accomplishments in terms of COVID, but rather in spite of it. After all, perseverance isn't just about making the best of a situation, but also about defying the odds and excelling in the face of adversity. And time again, whether it was on the ropes course, in a play, or during a pandemic, we adapted, overcame, and persevered. Now, I learned a lot of other lessons on the ropes course too. Don't wear new white shoes in the woods. Never give faculty water guns. And at all costs, avoid situations that involve strangers with rope. It's pretty applicable. But by far, the values of balance, teamwork, and perseverance have had the most instrumental impact on my time at Loomis. So if I could say anything to freshman year John as he leaves the meadows, returning slightly disheartened from his first day of orientation, I would tell him that even though you may sometimes feel confused, anxious, and nervous for the future, your time here at Loomis Chaffee and the people you will encounter will challenge you, inspire you, and transform you. And 4 years later, when you're a senior and the rash from the rope burn has faded, you will want nothing more than to thank your classmates for walking the tightrope with you. So, to the entire senior class, I say thank you for the memories we've given each other, the struggles we've overcome, and the love that we will continue to share long after we've left the island. Class of 2021, it's been an honor.
Thank you, John.